All right, we're going to take a look at President Johnson. President Johnson was Lincoln's vice president, and he became Lincoln's vice president because Lincoln didn't really care who his vice president was going to be, but the Republican Party and under Abraham Lincoln wanted to do as much as they could to try to bring Southerners back in 1864. This is going to be different than their attitude in 1865 because of the end of the war. But in 1864, they're looking to bring as many Democrats together with the rest of the Union as possible. And so what they do is they want to split the Republican ticket between the president and the vice president. And they do so by actually nominating a Democrat in order to be vice president. Now, during this time, you will sometimes see Abraham Lincoln elected under the Republican Party banner, but oftentimes you'll see Abraham Lincoln listed under the National Unity Party. And so the Republicans use this National Unity Party banner to bring everyone together, and they nominate Andrew Johnson in order to be vice president. He was a Southern Democrat from Tennessee, but he had elected to stay with the Union after the rest of the South seceded. It was an effort to try to put Southerners in positions of power within the administration. It was an effort to try to show the Southerners that there wouldn't be a grudge held against them. But once Abraham Lincoln is shot, this changes people's attitudes about the South and Southerners. And so when Abraham Lincoln is assassinated and Andrew Johnson takes over, he's now dealing with a group of very angry Republicans in Congress. And those very angry Republicans in Congress want to punish the South. Andrew Johnson could have played along. He could have said, okay, well, I am from the South, but I chose to stay with the Union for a reason. The Union is right, and so we're going to punish the South for killing Lincoln, for starting this war. We're going to punish them for doing all these bad things. But Andrew Johnson, his heart probably still with the South, and also becoming vice president on the assassination of a president, wanted to continue Abraham Lincoln's plan. Now, in 1863, Abraham Lincoln put together his plan for reuniting those southern states. One thing that they were going to have to do was they were going to have to be accepted back into the national government, and they were also going to have to rebuild their state governments at the end of the war. And so Abraham Lincoln said that if we can take 10% of those who rebelled, which would be Southern voters, and we can get just 10% of them to make a Pledge of Allegiance to the Union, then we can begin this process of Reconstruction. We can allow the southern states to build a new southern state government, but that southern state government is going to have to follow some new rules, and it's going to have to be more in line with the national government. Once those southern state governments are established, then those southern state governments can then put people back into the national government, the House of Representatives and the Senate. And so by making it a very easy process to only take 10% of those who had rebelled and bring them back, and then allow that state to rebuild itself in terms of government after that, it was going to go a long way in order to bring southern states back into the Union both very quickly and without much anger. Abraham Lincoln felt that if we punish the South, then they are going to resent that, and they're going to remember that for a long time. What he didn't want was people being angry at each other still. If we continue this process of being angry at each other, then we're never going to be fully united. And so this is why Abraham Lincoln and then Andrew Johnson wanted to make this process very easy. The Wade-Davis bill passed in 1864, though, was a reaction against this. Republicans said that it doesn't do us any good if only 10% of them say that they have now made this renewed Pledge of Allegiance. What we need to do is we need to make sure that 50% or a majority of the population makes this oath, that a majority of them actually want to come back and are able to rule themselves. And so They demand 50% take this pledge of allegiance, 50% of the voters take this pledge of allegiance, and also that those Southern constitutions, those new state governments, go a long way towards guaranteeing the rights and security of the former slaves. Lincoln knows that the Southerners are going to resent this, and so he pocket vetoes the bill, which means it is vetoed without his signature because Congress wasn't there to override it. And when finally Congress meets again and these southern states begin to send their representatives, those Southerners who show up are not allowed to take their seats. The House of Representatives and the Senate both are allowed, according to the Constitution, to expel any of their own members. They are allowed to decide who gets the seat or not. So even if you elect somebody, excuse me, it's still up to Congress itself to decide whether they want to keep that person that you've elected. And so we have these two groups that form in the Congress. There is the majority of the Republicans. Now, keep in mind that this is the majority of the Republicans in Congress at the time. They want to be more forgiving. They are known as the moderate Republicans. We have a very vocal but very strong minority group within the Republican Party called the Radical Republicans. The Radical Republicans are the ones who want to punish the South. Now, even though they were the minority, they had a lot of popularity and they had a lot of backing among those northern states, especially after Lincoln is assassinated. And so these radical Republicans, this radical group, end up being those who take quite a bit of control, quite a bit of power in the Congress at this time. Andrew Johnson begins to recognize these 10% governments. Once 10% of them made that oath, then Andrew Johnson would accept them back. And he grants a lot of pardons without Congress's approval. Now, according to the Constitution, the President of the United States has the power to pardon anyone for any offense. And so Andrew Johnson says, well, I'm just using the power that's given to me in the Constitution. The Radical Republicans felt that he was overstepping his bounds and become very angry. And this leads to a lot of tension between the two groups and also a lot of problems later on.